to turn to the question of Iran, I'm curious how you would analyze the democratic the response of democratic leadership to Israel's attack and then America's attack on Iran.
It was too muted. It was too mixed. I mean, we should be the party that says no more wars of choice in the Middle East. The reality is that the vast majority of Americans are wary of these wars. When you have even Republicans like Josh Hawley saying, "I'm concerned now we have to increase our troop presence in the Middle East. We're spending more money there. We're spending money on all these bombs, all these missiles." That we don't need to be dragged into more conflict and more overseas engagement militarily, then there's an opening for the Democratic Party to be the party against these wars of choice, to be the party that says we're going to focus on investing here at home. And there were a few of us who were very outspoken on that, Massey, myself, and other Democrats, but there were many Republicans who there were many Democratic leaders who kind of wanted to have a wait and see approach. And I think it was just a missed opportunity for us to show clear moral leadership.
So why do you think that is? I mean, as you say, the polling shows that going to war with Iran is very unpopular among Democrats and also unpopular among Republicans, right? And you're overriding Congress's authority. Plus, Donald Trump, a wartime Donald Trump is even more dangerous than a peacetime Donald Trump in terms of his own authority, his authoritarianism. So how do you explain the fact that Democratic leaders weren't more forceful in saying, we demand a vote in Congress, and we think this is a terrible idea?
The reason is because there are a lot of them who believed, I think, that to take out Iran's nuclear capability, I mean, just like they had signed off on Israel's strike in the early 1980s on Iraq, they had signed off on the Iraq war. They fundamentally believe deep down that the Iranian nuclear threat should be eliminated even by military force. And I think that they understand that there's a progressive wing of the party that doesn't want more of these wars, but they were just hoping, well, let me just be quiet about it. I'm not going to be out there saying, okay, I support the strikes, but I'm not going to take a position against it. And the reality is that they're just out of step with where the American people are. The American people don't want more of these wars in the Middle East. They recognize that the consequences often come a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. Consequences being that Iran is going to find other ways to develop their weapons and may not have the IAEA inspectors there. Consequences being that our troops are more at risk, Americans are more at risk, we're spending more money in the Middle East. What are we going to bomb them every 2 years if they develop new facilities, new capability? What are we going to do with, are we going to send in our, or allow Israel to, or approve of Israel sending in ground troops to actually destroy the enriched uranium they have in canisters? So I think these are the questions the American people are asking, and they want leadership for a party to be against these wars.
One of the things that is a sensitive thing to talk about, but that people, I'm always deluged with this when I write critically about Democratic leadership, as I did in a column last week in the Times, is people say to me, well, we think it's in large measure because of the influence of AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups, that's essentially that's playing a significant role in their unwillingness to oppose these very hawkish and I think you and I think just self-destructive, militaristic, hawkish policies in the Middle East. How much of a role do you think that plays?
Well, look, I'm opposed to all PAC spending, all super PAC spending, and I have criticized all super PACs, all PACs. I don't take $1 of PAC money. I don't take $1 of lobby spending. I don't have a super PAC. Summer Lee and I have a bill to abolish the super PACs. And I've said that PACs and super PACs have too much influence in American democracy. And the reason I pointed in a broad way is because I think we shouldn't be viewpoint discriminatory about it. We should just say that all of these super PACs and PACs are negative. But I think the problem is deeper than that. Even if you got rid of all of the super PAC money, I think that there's a conventional wisdom of the foreign policy blob, the foreign policy circles, that we need a hawkish militaristic approach to regime change in some cases with Iran, to denying them a nuclear weapon. And these folks get into the positions of the national security apparatus, regardless almost of who wins the presidency. I realized what a difference it would have been if Bernie Sanders had won compared to Joe Biden, not during the first couple of years of his presidency, but when the war in Gaza happened, because I realized that Bernie Sanders just would have had a very different people in there in shaping foreign policy. So yes, we need to get rid of the PAC and super PAC money, but ultimately we need to elect a progressive presidents, or have presidents appoint progressive people in these foreign policy roles for there really to be a change.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're mentioning something that has often struck me and strikes me about the media too, which is that the same people tend to remain in these positions of prominence, often who are quite hawkish, regardless of essentially what the outcome of the policies they suggest turns out to be, right? It's not like, you support Iraq, you support Libya, whatever, and then they say, well, you know what? Let's bring someone else on to talk on the next foreign policy roundtable whose predictions were about this were better, or for that matter, about Gaza. And it seems to be within the foreign policy establishment in the jobs that's true as well. So even if you have a president who might be a little bit less hawkish, like Obama, he ends up appointing often advisors who are more hawkish than him. And what is it about the way Washington works that means that you literally have people like John Bolton still kind of basically as people who kind of folks are listening to, or some of the Florida Biden administration officials, frankly, who I don't think people should be listening to at this point, given what happened on Gaza. Why isn't there a kind of a change or a kind of a process in which people are held to account?
It's been the most disappointing thing. I mean, I don't want to pick on Brett McGurk, but when he's on CNN
Absolutely.
for an hour
Pick on him. I mean, he
talking
deserves it.
about, talking about Iran, when he chair-led us into Iraq, when he has been wrong on almost every foreign policy call, and it's sort of, he just survives. These people just end up surviving despite being wrong, because they're seen as having the judgment and having the experience, and that you need a steady hand. And they have dominated American foreign policy. It's one of the reasons when Donald Trump rails against the elites that has resonance, because the American people say, yeah, we need that cabal broken up. We don't want the same people who offshored our jobs, who watched this country become half prosperous and half in decline, who got us in these endless wars, making the decisions for us. And even Trump, who campaigns that way, ends up getting influenced by people who are itching for regime change and itching for new wars. In fact, that Trump at one point was talking about regime change on Truth Social. It's like he's getting pushed by both sides. Now, I do think there's an element of the MAGA base that really was opposed to it, and that ultimately prevailed, and he kept the operation to one day, and hopefully this ceasefire holds. But the Democratic Party needs a new generation of people in foreign policy, and it needs people from all diverse parts of our country and from outside the traditional establishment.